Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times, a Prancing Pony podcast production. I'm the Man of the West, and I thank you for joining me for First Stage Friday. Now, when I started Series 10 all the way back in June, I began reading through Of Tuor and His Coming to Gondolin. At the time, I thought it would take me 10, 11, 12 weeks, maybe a full 2 series. How about almost 3 full series? We've got just 2 more gates to get through, so let's move on up the path. Last time, we made our way through the 5th gate, the Gate of Silver, and we ended on a long white road heading straight towards the 6th gate with the beautiful Ulos and Eleanor flowers alongside the road. Let's pick up there. So they came to the Golden Gate, the last of the ancient gates of Turgon that were wrought before the Nirnaeth. And it was much like the Gate of Silver, save that the wall was built of yellow marble, and the globes and parapet were of red gold. And there were 6 globes, and in the midst upon a golden pyramid was set an image of Laurelin, the tree of the sun, with flowers wrought of topaz in long clusters upon chains of gold. And the gate itself was adorned with discs of gold many-rayed in likenesses of the sun, set amid devices of garnet and topaz and yellow diamonds. In the court beyond were arrayed 300 archers with longbows, and their mail was gilded, and tall golden plumes rose from their helmets, and their great round shields were red as flame. Now sunlight fell upon the further road, for the walls of the hills were low on either side, and green but for the snows upon their tops. And Elem-Makil hastened forward, for the way was short, to the 7th gate, named the Great, the gate of steel that Maeglin wrought after the return from the Nirnaeth, across the wide entrance to the Orfalk Echor. No wall stood there, but on either hand were 2 round towers of great height, many-windowed, tapering in 7 stories to a turret of bright steel. And between the towers there stood a mighty fence of steel that rusted not, but glittered cold and white. 7 great pillars of steel there were, tall with the height and girth of strong young trees, but ending in a bitter spike that rose to the sharpness of a needle. And between the pillars were 7 crossbars of steel, and in each space 7 times 7 rods of steel upright, with heads like the broad blades of spears. But in the center, above the midmost pillar and the greatest, was raised a mighty image of the king helm of Turgon, the crown of the hidden kingdom, set about with diamonds. No gate or door could Tuor see in this mighty hedge of steel, but as he drew near through the spaces between its bars, there came, as it seemed to him, a dazzling light, and he shaded his eyes and stood still in dread and wonder. But Elem-Makil went forward, and no gate opened to his touch, but he struck upon a bar, and the fence rang like a harp of many strings, giving forth clear notes in harmony that ran from tower to tower. Straightway there issued riders from the towers, but before those of the north tower came one upon a white horse, and he dismounted and strode towards them. And high and noble as was Elem-Makil, greater and more lordly was Ecthelion, lord of the fountains, at that time warden of the great gate. All in silver was he clad, and upon his shining helm there was set a spike of steel pointed with a diamond. And as his esquire took his shield, it shimmered as if it were bedewed with drops of rain that were indeed 1,000 studs of crystal. Elem-Makil saluted him and said, "Here have I brought Vronwe Ranwean, returning from Balar, and here is the stranger that he has led hither, who demands to see the king." We'll get to Ecthelion in just a bit, but let's go back to that gorgeous Golden Gate. After last week's Silver Gate, with Telperion reproduced in silver and malachite with flowers of pearl, we get to its gatemate, if you will, or even, I suppose, if you won't. The Golden Gate is inspired by the other of the 2 trees, Laurelin. Now, in many ways, it's the same as the previous gate, right? Marble, globes, a parapet, and an image of a tree. But the marble is yellow instead of white. The globes and parapet are red gold instead of silver, and the tree has flowers of topaz, which is dark yellow, on long gold chains. And just like the silver gate had all that moon imagery, this one has sun imagery. But instead of 200 archers in the courtyard beyond, this one has 300. And their armor is gold with golden helmet plumes and big red round shields. Now, Gondolin began to be built around 64 of the first age and was completed around the year 116. So somewhere in that range, the gates were built. So for around 400 years, this golden gate was the last one. But as the text explains, this final gate was designed by Maeglin after he returned from the Nirnaeth. That took place in 472, so it just depends on when the gates were built in that process of building Gondolin itself. Somewhere between 356 years and 408 years before this seventh gate gets built. And wow, is this an impressive piece of engineering. We've got a 70-foot high tower on either side, rising to steel turrets. And then between the towers, you get a steel fence, but look at the detail. You have 7 pillars, like as wide as a tree. Then you have 7 crossbars. But in each of the spaces created by these pillars and crossbars, you have another 7 by 7, another 49 steel rods. And if that's not enough intimidation, you have a huge representation of Turgon's crown surrounded by diamonds. And by the way, the fence is tuned. And Lemekil goes up to it, hits one of the bars, and we get music like a harp of many strings with notes in harmony. That is unbelievable. What an amazing sight. What an amazing sound. Speaking of amazing, remember how impressed we all were with Lemekil when we first met him last series? Forget about him. Because now we have Ecthelion, Lord of the Fountains. Now, I don't see any fountains up here, but this is the same Ecthelion who we read about in the fall of Gondolin. Of the deeds of desperate valor there done by the chieftains of the noble houses and their warriors, and not least by Tuor, much is told in the fall of Gondolin. Of the battle of Ecthelion of the Fountain with Gothmog, Lord of Balrogs, in the very square of the king, where each slew the other. That's the same Balrog that killed Feanor. Anyway, we'll get to that battle some other time for sure. For now, folks, that's it for today's First Stage Friday, and even though this run of First Stage Fridays has turned out to be a lot longer than planned, I'll eventually get back to Fandom Fridays, hopefully in Series 14. So if you know anyone who should join me here for a future Fandom Friday, just email barliman@theprancingponypodcast.com. And please visit patreon.com/TolkienTimes to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, a monthly hangout with me, a bonus weekly episode, and more. And then join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times as we wrap up this week with Silmarillion Saturday. Subscribe to the TTT in your podcast apps or here to the PPP channel on YouTube, and be sure you're following @PrancingPonyPod on social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.